Hogstye.
Hey everybody, and welcome to our post-game show. Seattle beats Washington by 5 points in the end. Bit of a letdown because Washington was driving, and you were looking at what could have been another historic upset type game like we had versus the Steelers. Last-minute drive wins it all. But no, sadly, Haskins gets sacked on back-to-back plays, forcing a 4th and a mile kind of passing situation. Not ideal. And you kind of knew it was over at that point. We're going to get into the whole game right off the bat. I got Steve, I got Jamal with me. Guys, I want to start talking about Haskins because up until the end of the first half, I had written out my intro for this, and it was, thank you, Dwayne, for showing us we need to draft a quarterback next year. But he did come back in this game a little bit and, wasn't completely terrible the whole time. But let's start off. I want to start talking offense and talking Haskins, guys. So I want your takes on that first.
Okay, well, I'm going to do the stats first because my OCD will go crazy if I don't.
Okay, well, give me Haskins' stats first.
Okay. Haskins was 38 for 55 for 295 yards with 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, sacked 4 times, and had a quarterback rating of 72.9. So there you go. And his net passing yards, since we're going to get into this, was 269 yards once you subtract out the sacks.
Right.
Rushing-wise, as a team, they were 20 for 84. J.D. McKissick was 13 for 51, 3.9 yards per attempt. Peyton Barber, 4 carries, 5 yards. Surprise, surprise. Logan Thomas, 13 for 101. Terry McLaurin, 7 for 77. J.D. McKissick, 9 for 56. Cam Sims, 5 for 26. Isaiah Wright, 2 for 15. Steven Sims, 1 for 11. Robert Foster, 1 for 9. And Seattle, Russell Wilson was 18 for 27 for 121 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, quarterback rating of 73.2. As a team, Seattle rushed for 181 yards on 26 carries. That includes Carlos Hyde's 50-yard touchdown. T was 2 for 55. Chris Carson, 15 for 63. Russell Wilson himself was 6 for 52. Receiving-wise, DK Metcalf, 5 for 43. Tyler Lockett, 4 for 34, and it goes down from there. No sacks today for Washington. Leading tackler was Cameron Curl. And the interception was Daron Payne. And
yes,
from
off
a
of
punting
that very
standpoint,
beautiful tip by Sweat.
Yeah, punting, Tressway was 4 for 182. That's stats. So Haskins, you know what I wrote? I think that about halfway through the third quarter, I started writing some Haskins thoughts and notes. And that was before those 2 drives where he looked good, because he kind of looked good for the rest of the game. I think the game just hasn't really slowed down for him, because it's not a question of arm talent with him. It looks like he's just kind of lost. Early in the game, through halftime, through the beginning of the third quarter, I mean, his decision-making was off. That's what caused the interceptions. He made dumb throws. And I could just tell it's like he just wasn't processing fast enough. Like on the second interception, the safety was going to undercut the throw. He should have gone deep, on the post. I just think it's for him, it's just, I think he just needs to play a lot. I think that's what Haskins' problem. He might not necessarily be Tom Brady in the end, but I think with him, he just needs to play a lot. That's what I think.
So I've done. So it's 4:25 as we're recording this. The game ended probably, let's say, like 4:05ish. I think 4:05.
Yeah, so 20 minutes ago.
So initially, when the game ended, I had said that I respect Dwayne Haskins for the last 20 minutes of football that he played. Not literally as in respect him as a person. Like I've always done that, but just in his game, I respect what he did and how he played because he made no mental mistakes. But here's the thing that dawned on me literally as Alex asked the question. You know what's crazy? We haven't seen Haskins since week 4. He got benched after his 4 games, or was it his 5th game? I can't remember. Either way, he got benched early on in the season. But do you know what was going on in the early parts of this season that is kind of resembling what we saw today? And it was slow starts fueled by a second half comeback that made it seem like Haskins played well. And if you think about it, look, the same thing happened in the Eagles game. The defense stepped up, but Haskins also played well. They ended up coming back against a a defeated. Little do we know at the time, but a defeated Eagles team. Then you look at the next few losses. You try to come back against the Cardinals and the Browns. You fall short, but you have a comeback attempt, but you come up to a slow start. And then the same thing with Baltimore, but this time you were just never in it against Baltimore. So with that being said, I feel like Haskins again. He was right on script with what we saw earlier in the year, and I can't necessarily say that he improved or has learned anything from the previous weeks of him being benched behind Kyle Allen and Alex Smith. And it's kind of crazy and it's sad that I keep saying something like that, or anybody else would keep saying something like that. But I wouldn't say that they're lying. I think it's partially true, because you're just looking at a guy who's repeated the same things over and over again, unfortunately. And we're not going to blame the game on Haskins, because he was the reason why they were still in it. But at the same time, early on, he was the reason why they were down multiple touchdowns. So it's just rough.
Jamal, it's not an unfair point, but I would also point out that this team started slow under Kyle Allen. This team has started slow under Alex Smith. This team has not, like, the first quarters. I've actually mentioned this on Twitter to somebody. I would like to take some time at some point to just break down the first 15 plays from every game, because those are the scripted plays for most people still, for most of these offensive coordinators. And I know it's not the West Coast offense where that's, the hardcore way you do it, but those first 15 plays have been awful. Doesn't matter who the quarterback is, doesn't matter who else is out there. They don't know what they're doing or what they're scripting those first 15 plays, it seems like. And that first quarter for every starting quarterback has just been awful. Haskins is no exception. They say game in, game out, this team has not scored on an opening drive all year. Doesn't matter who's
correct.
there.
And so what I will say is that that's actually further proving my bottom line, which is Washington needs to get rid of at least two of these quarterbacks. I would say keep Smith based on what we know so far, and like his veteran presence and awareness helps the team out regardless if he's the starter or he's the backup.
Sure.
But my point or my bottom line to all this is nothing has changed with anybody. And we're not going to get any better if we sit here hoping that Haskins is going to turn the corner anytime soon. And that's to be said about him, but that's also to be said about Alex Smith, because he's not going to be the future. But it's also to be said about Kyle Allen, because he's not going to be the future. And like, we're going to fool ourselves if we sit here and talk about a discussion with Haskins and saying, I've seen improvements. If you sit here and tell me that you've seen improvements, okay, I don't even know if I can entertain a discussion, but like to what degree? It's hard to sit here and tell me and sit here and talk that you said you've seen improvements. Like that's just not there. Every single time we talk about Haskins, we talk about his maturity and things that he's done well off the field. We've never talked about the mechanical issues that he's had and what he's done to work on those and to improve those. That's never been a conversation in terms of his development. It's always been about mental and how mature he is or how mature he isn't. And that's just where we're at.
Yeah. I didn't say he improved. I think he looked about the same, to be honest. He's gone through ups and downs before. My original point to what your first thing you said, Jamal, was what Alex said, which is this team has started slow in the first half all year, including all those under those two other guys as well. And I think that is because they just execute poorly across the board for some reason early in these games. And the other thing is, sometimes they're trying to establish a running game, and they don't have a running game to speak of, basically. They don't really have a running game, especially with Antonio Gibson out. Even with Antonio Gibson, for most of those games, they didn't have a running game, and so it didn't work. And when that didn't work, I think it just sort of throws them off. If they could ever get their running game established early, I think you might see things differently. The ubiquitous everybody, we might see things differently.
Right.
But I don't think Haskins has improved. I think he looked exactly the same for the most part. He's never really been able to put four quarters together wherein he looks good all four quarters. And again, I really think it takes him a while in these games, because he just hadn't played a lot to really have the game sort of slow down for him and get comfortable and get him sort of used to football, if you will, NFL football. So maybe he'll never get there, but I've said a million times here, the Redskins organization or the Washington organization could, write a book on how to ruin a quarterback you draft, we've been through the history. I'm not going to repeat it here, but
yeah,
he's not had the traditional path, and I'm not saying they need to keep him next year. So everybody keep your pants on. Okay. But I think things would have been different for this kid under different circumstances. And that's true for a lot of quarterbacks. So, I think Alex Smith ought to play if he's ready, because they're legitimately in competition for first place here. So you can't give that up. But if they're ever out of it, I think I'd let Haskins play, but I don't think Ron Rivera will.
Yeah, I don't. Well, I mean, depends on what happens with the Giants game now, but
I know. I mean, they're in it now, and they're going to be in it till the end. So they need to let Alex play. But
I don't think there's a scientific way where they can possibly be not playing up until week 17 to be the champion. Like,
somehow, some way, at least.
If Cleveland beats the Giants, I really think you only just need one. But even with that being said,
probably
with that being the case, I can't remember if it was Alex or Steven, or it just happened a second ago, who said that Alex Smith needs to be the starter moving forward. Yes, Steve. I 100% agree. And I don't care.
I think we're all in agreement there.
Okay, so that's cool. We all agree, because I think one of the key things being is that because the only reason why I want to speak on it is because I've seen people after the game saying that Haskins needs to be the starter moving forward. But at what point did he tell you, based on our conversation that we're having right now, and those who are listening, what point did he tell you throughout that game that he's more prepared than Alex? And that he can at least move the ball more efficiently than Alex? Who, at what point did he show you that in the game? And why does it have to be for Scott Turner and Haskins to vamp up the offense in terms of its tempo? Why is that the only way that they can move the ball? That's just what I don't see why he needs to be the starter. He needs to go back to where he was, because clearly he's not ready yet. And this is very important for us in terms of making a playoff push. It's very important. You can't really just risk that trying to develop Haskins thinking he's the best shot moving forward. I just don't see it.
I think you have a great point there. The only thing Haskins gives you that Smith doesn't is Haskins has a better deep ball connection
he has a
with
stronger
Terry
arm.
McLaurin.
He ain't got no better deep arm connection. No, sir. I'm sorry.
Okay, stronger arm's a better way to put it, sure. Yeah.
Well, because look, we seen
these two Alex Smith is better.
We saw it. I mean, the two interceptions that he threw, we saw it. It ain't it.
Yeah.
Alex Smith is better at everything right now than Dwayne Haskins. Except maybe running. Haskins probably a better scrambler.
That's true. Haskins can run. Alex can no longer run. Alex used to be a very good runner, though.
I just don't think he's had enough time to really get his NFL feet down, if you will. He's still a young guy. He should just be like a senior in college right now.
Sure, but
he only played 17 college games. He came out too early. If I were advising him, I would have advised him to stay at Ohio State another year. I'm not saying Washington should keep him or anything like that, but I just think he needed different circumstances than he got here, and I think he has talent. It's just a combination of him being sort of slow to develop it and the team kind of blitzkrieging through a first-round draft pick a little bit.
I'll be honest. What I'm seeing, I don't see his ceiling being much higher than where he's at. He doesn't have he doesn't have NFL level accuracy, and that doesn't get fixed at this point. I don't know of many guys who go from being like a 50-50 guy to suddenly being Tom Brady accurate. Like, it doesn't happen often.
It's with him. It's just sort of the way he sees the field more so than his accuracy.
He overthrows way too much. A lot of his balls get tipped up. And become picks. Because he's overthrowing stuff. He's putting way too much. He has no touch. Even if he has the mental side down better than we think, I don't think you can fix that issue with his accuracy and his touch on the ball easily. That's harder to fix than strength.
As you do. I look at it the opposite way you do. I think he could get there on that part. It's the mental part that I think is the bigger problem for him, in my view.
No, I don't think we have a good enough. I don't think it's. I mean, because from what people behind the scenes say, he's got a good head on his shoulders. This is not a dumb kid. So,
No, but there's a difference between not being. Robert Griffin isn't dumb. Robert Griffin's a pretty smart guy too.
Right.
If you put him in front of an ACT test, he would do pretty well. But with Haskins, I just think the game is just he hadn't gotten it yet. From a football acumen standpoint and a speed of the game standpoint, I just think his mind isn't really there yet. And maybe it won't ever be, but I don't think he's really there yet. I think that's his biggest problem, personally.
I don't disagree with anything you all said. I
think we all agree they need to find a new quarterback next year, though, right?
I just think it's unfortunate that we're having this conversation. But the narrative has not changed. So that's just where I'm at with it. And
that's true.
It's going to suck. Steve, good thing for you that you've taken your hiatus, or you're still on your hiatus from Twitter. But like that's just what you'll see the rest of this week, if not longer. People arguing about which terrible quarterback needs to play for Washington down the stretch. Like it's just not.
And then which terrible quarterback should we draft at 19? That'll be good.
It definitely needs to not be Kyle Allen. I'm done with the Kyle Allen experiment.
Yeah, me too. I'm with you there. Kyle Allen to me is just like another John Beck kind of guy. Like career backup.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about the rest of the offense because that's going to be the bigger question regardless who's quarterback. McKissick had a very good day, I thought. Logan Thomas is suddenly become a legit NFL tight end for us. Almost impressively so, in my mind. They still need to figure some consistency out at receiver. Even Terry McLaurin, like, as good as he is, he's just getting blanketed, so you only see him a few times a game now. Because I think teams have kind of figured out just triple cover him or whatever they're doing,
Well, I mean, for the record, he had 12 targets and 77 yards, so that was sort of the first half.
Yeah.
He kind of broke out a little bit in the second half in this game in terms of receptions and yards.
Yeah.
I mean,
his first two catches were for negative yards.
Yeah, I mean, at halftime, he was 3 for 16 on 5 targets.
Right.
At halftime.
Right. And, again, the first two were negative 2 yards and negative 1 yard because they were bad screens.
Yeah. I don't think J.D. McKissick I think he had a great day as a pass-catching running back. I don't think he had a great day as a running back. He had a decent day as a running back. I mean, he was 13 for 51. It's just Washington doesn't really have a run game to speak of. They just don't. I don't know why. Who's the guy they just saw? I mean, Lamar Miller wasn't active.
Right.
I don't know why you don't give some of these other guys a few carries. That Michael Warren was active, from the practice squad. Mm-hmm. Why didn't he get a shot? I mean, you have 0, so there's other than McKissick on, they have 0 inside. Put that way. I don't know why you don't give somebody a shot, for God's sakes, at running.
I'm not sure either because I don't think Gibson will be back this year. I think they'll kind of hold him out with the turf toe, but. So you
I
might
hope
as well
not,
see.
But it sounds like it, and he's learning too. Is the thing?
Yeah.
He's not a traditional pounded in the A gap running back either.
No,
he's getting better at it, no doubt. But I think they sort of need a Mr. Inside to his Mr. Outside kind of deal. To use an old
line's gotten
Army
better
reference.
And started to gel on those inside runs, though. Finally, I have noticed that. They're looking good on the inside runs. The tackles, bad game for them, especially in that fourth quarter.
Terrible.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I wanted to talk about, like for a split second, not too long, but
no, go ahead. I saw your little Morgan Moses rant, so go ahead.
Like the thing that kind of got to me, I'm not even sitting here saying because I saw a tweet that said somebody actually he said he was playing, he wasn't necessarily serious, but he was saying like the offensive line blew that game. Speaking on the last drive when they gave up those sacks, the one thing I had an issue with was just how Morgan Moses handled that situation. I completely understand coming back in and fighting with your teammates because you were injured. You're the best player on that team at that position. You need to come back in and help your teammates out. The issue I had at that point, though, was the momentum and also the flow of the team. Yes, you're not really that keen with, I think it was David Sharp in there, that was his primary backup. But at the same time, if they're moving the ball well now, why are you forcing yourself in, especially after the time that you took off? Why are you forcing yourself into that situation? And then why are you going to take the guy who's been playing on that drive, who has been playing all right, to get them to that point? Let him finish this drive out, and you come in at any other instance of a beginning of a drive. Just for example, because if you were in a position to tie that game up and go into overtime, you come back in the next drive. You make sure that you're well enough to start a drive, not come in the midst of somebody's playing well, your offense is moving the ball, you haven't played a few snaps, and now you're going to come in and block. And the first thing that happens when he comes in is he gets bull rushed by Dunlap.
Can I just stop you right there, Jamal, and just point out that was one of the worst bulldozed offensive lineman plays I've ever seen in my entire life at the NFL level. That looked like me out there against, who was that? Devontae Adams, was that? Whoever it was.
He stood no chance.
That looked like me out there.
I think it was Dunlap,
it was
wasn't
Dunlap,
it?
There it was, Carlos Dunlap.
So it's like, on top of that, he stood there on his, after it happened, like he was on his knees. I don't know if he was either disappointed himself or if he was actually hurt, but that just goes to the point, like, you just got to understand, like, that was, in my opinion, I felt like that was selfish. Because you wanted to come in and be a part of the comeback, as opposed to allowing your teammate to finish the job that he clearly had under control at that moment. You allowed yourself to get back into the game because you knew the coaches wasn't going to say no. Like, you're Morgan Moses. You're the best right tackle on the team. But I felt like that was just a little selfish, given the situation. He could have waited at least till the next drive, assuming that there was another drive. Like, that would have been the smartest thing to do. You didn't have to force yourself back into the game. And lo and behold, you give up 2 sacks.
I guess it depends on what his injury was. I mean, again, I'm not on Twitter anymore, so I don't know what they say about it. But, I mean, if he's completely healthy, I have a hard time saying to him, stay on the sidelines.
I mean,
because he's the starter.
They didn't really. I didn't see a whole lot on Twitter about what had happened to him. I saw. I mean, they said on the broadcast that he had some kind of ankle injury.
Yeah, but I don't know how bad it was.
Yeah. So again, like I also emphasize the fact, like, I wasn't blaming Morgan. Like, I understand, like, you want to go back in, so I wasn't blaming him. But I also felt like in context, in the flow of the game, I felt that was just selfish because you still could have waited. Especially after the amount of time that you took off. You took a few plays off, if not multiple. I don't know how many exactly, but he definitely took a few plays off.
I think he was hurt the previous series.
Yeah, so it's like you just let that ride out and you come back in when it's necessary. Or even a timeout, like a TV timeout or something like that. You come back in at that point. But you don't come back in when they're in the midst of a drive moving forward and stuff like that. So that's where I just didn't agree with that, but at the same time I don't blame him. Like, you just could have thought about that a little bit smarter.
Well, it's the old you got to protect players from themselves thing. So I also put some of that on the training staff for not, like, if that's what you think is ready and you see what happened, then maybe you need to reassess as a training staff when you're letting guys get out there.
Maybe. I'd like to kind of summarize the offense here because I know we need to move on. But, I think what we saw is more of the same that we've seen all year long. Mm-hmm. I mean, Washington has no doubt put up some points against some bad teams and whatnot. But the offense is really basically the same.
Yeah.
Since day one, more or less. And what it is, they have no running game whatsoever. Unless you have, Antonio Gibson makes some progress on these misdirection plays and, things like that. But they really have no traditional running game at all. And that throws the whole offense off, So I think it's not going to get fixed until they really get a running game going. I'm not saying they need to become, Marty Schottenheimer's, Redskins, but I don't think any of this is going to get better till that. And the other thing is, like you pointed out, Alex, until they get a receiver that scares anybody who's not named Terry McLaurin, you're going to continue to see, the Jamal Adams of the world blanketing and bracketing Terry McLaurin every single week. The Steelers did it. The 49ers did it.
Yep.
The Seahawks did it. So those two things really need to change, and that's not going to change this year. And the other thing, frankly, is they need a more dynamic quarterback. Alex Smith, yes, best one we have now, but, he ain't Cam Newton in 2013,
No. No.
They need they need those three things before the offense is going to get better. And that's saying nothing about the offensive line. So I think that's my summary about the offense.
The real problem is none of this can be fixed. There's no one on the bench who can spark this thing right now.
Yeah, it is what it is for 2020.
Yeah, I mean, you got to hope that they can address some of these in the offseason. My concern is I don't think you can address quarterback in 1 year. I think it, even if you got a free agent, it takes a year to learn an offense. So
I don't want them to reach. I am not a Trey Lance fan, for example. Please do not reach for him. The North Dakota State guy, I'm not a fan. And I don't want them to reach for a quarterback like that just because he's the name du jour, if you will. If somebody is there, fine, draft him. But I don't want them to reach for a quarterback just to reach for a quarterback this year.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's always a concern.
Yeah.
But you got to keep taking shots, too. It's a ebb and flow thing with that. You got to keep taking a risk and trying to find a guy at the same time.
It's become like the Keystone Cops at this point, though, Alex. I mean, how many decades are they going to do it,
Until they get one.
It's been literally 25 years,
It's been more than that.
With the exception of Jason Campbell, who lived up to his potential more or less, which was fairly low. It's been since Mark Rippon, I guess,
If not longer, because Rippon got a very short career.
I mean, he won him a Super Bowl, though, at least.
Yeah, that's true. All right, let's talk about the defense, guys. They struggled versus the run game. I think that puts it nicely. I wasn't surprised about it because as soon as I saw the inactives list and saw that KPL and Cole Holcomb were both inactive for this game, I guess injuries and all that, I knew that the front seven was going to take a dip, especially in the run game.
Hey, our awesome front defensive line looked like doo-doo at times today. That wasn't just the linebackers.
Yeah, I know, but it takes the offensive or the defensive line and the linebackers really to stop a run game. Like you need. I don't put stopping the run game on a defensive end. Like that's their job is to clear space to make sure that the linebackers get to the guy. And
no, but look what Carlos Hyde did on that Carlos Hyde 50-yard run.
Yeah.
Notice what he did right up the A-gap. Deron Payne, John Allen.
Yeah, they both got blown out.
At one point, I really was concerned that they were going to go for 300 yards, but on the ground, I really did. After that run,
on that play,
before that run, they were having their way with them. So I really thought after that they were going for 300 because all they needed to do in order to keep our offense off the field was just run the ball. And they can run the ball without even having to throw. Like they're averaging nearly at that point. They was still averaging over 5 yards a carry. So that's just the frustrating thing of it. I think I said, if I didn't say it on here, I may have said it on my the guest feature with Burgundy's on. Washington's defense has struggled against good run offenses and people who do like to emphasize the run or at least add it to their game. Like that's just something that they've been doing or struggle with throughout the whole entire season. So with them coming against Seattle, like it's just like to what degree are they going to give up these runs, these big runs? And unfortunately, it was a 30-yarder and a 50-yarder or 40-yarder, however long it was behind. So it's just they had their way.
50.
Yeah, they did. I mean, it was two big runs. It was that one and the Russell Wilson run where, I'm sorry, I still think Chase Young got a face mask hold on him, and that's what blew open that run lane for Russell Wilson, but didn't get called.
I had to listen to the first most of the first quarter on the radio for various reasons, and I heard it, but I didn't see it, so I really couldn't give an opinion on that play.
Yeah, well, if you go back and watch it, which I know you rewatch everything.
Oh yeah,
you'll see Young has two guys on him. One of them's got his face mask like firmly, in grasp the whole time.
I'll tell you what, though, the other thing, the broadcast crew insinuated that Tress Way muffed a punt in the first punt. So they insinuated that was a terrible punt, and I didn't see it. Obviously, I haven't had time to go back.
It didn't feel like it to me, at least.
Really?
Normal yardage. I mean, it's Tress Way. Even if he muffs it, it's going to go 35, 40 yards.
Yeah, by his stand, his muff is better than most people's normal kick.
We need to rename the muff punt, by the way.
I actually think Seattle's offense got a little complacent there. And I think if they had sort of kept the energy up, they might have run for 300 yards, or close to it, as Jamal suggested. They were in control. Washington's offense was just atrocious, not doing literally zero. And I think Seattle got a little lazy. And, they had a bunch of 3-and-outs, and I just think they were kind of playing the clock more so than anything. And had it been a more competitive game up until the fourth quarter, I think you might have seen dramatically more yardage. So I sort of think that's on Seattle more so than it was ever on Washington's defense.
Yeah, I mean, luckily Washington's offense kind of got in rhythm, so that helped, negate that a little bit.
Made it a game, Washington got the backdoor cover for those who gamble. So, some people out there.
Oh, did they?
I know before y'all saying I didn't gamble. I'm still on my break. I've been cleaned out a couple times. I can't do it, but shout out to those who could play this weekend and had Washington plus 6.5.
So you're smart because you're not going to have Tony Soprano come break your ankle or something because you didn't pay him.
For what it's worth,
that.
Those who are listening, if you have the My Action or the Action Network app, you can still place bets. You just obviously aren't placing real money. So I still track my bets while I'm on this break. And for the record, I had the Ravens win. the Ravens. Jesus Christ. I had the Seahawks win in the first half, minus 3.5. And so if I did bet with Tony, I would have won because I had him. I had the Seahawks winning. So I'm not too bad out here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
doing all right.
Bright spot on the defense. Before we wrap up, the secondary really held these receivers in check pretty well. Now that might have been just because Seattle was running up and down the field on the ground, so maybe they didn't feel like they needed to throw. But Metcalf only had what you said, 3 catches, I think.
5 for 43 on 6 targets, and he was out for a little bit, at least with a hamstring injury.
Only about a series, not much. Yeah. So they kept the 2 big guys in check pretty well, though. So
again, part of it was that they just didn't really need him to do anything, and again, I think Seattle's as an offense got very lazy there for about 2 of those 4 quarters. It might have been a different game if Washington's offense had been more competitive. But yes, I mean, I was surprised that they did as good a job on Metcalf as they did. That was one of our keys to the game. You got to slow Metcalf down, and they did that. But unfortunately, it was the running attacks what did him in.
Yeah, no surprise there. All right, guys, why don't we wrap up with the game balls here? Not a whole lot to get too excited about, but. The second half of the game really made it almost worth watching. So let's do game balls. Jamal, I'm going to go to you first.
Defense, Cameron Curl. For what it's worth, I on the actual TV film, I don't know if I'll ever look at the All 32 this week, but on the TV film, he was jumping out. He was making a lot of tackles. I don't think he missed any. He was just playing physical per usual. So Cameron Curl, defensive MVP or game ball. Offense, Logan Thomas, man. I'll say this about Logan. I know what my opinion is with him throughout the season, especially in the beginning stages, and even a couple weeks ago. I'll give him his credit again. He's there for his quarterbacks. Quarterbacks with an S. He's there for his quarterbacks, and I can't, if somebody's playing good, you can't just keep saying that they're bad or they're overrated. I'll just say he still is a tight end number 2 to me, but right now he's stepping up big for his quarterbacks, and I can't knock him for that. So Logan Thomas and Cameron Curl.
Okay.
Yeah. I think you stole my thunder exactly, Jamal. I think on offense, it's got to be Logan Thomas. Nobody else really jumped out at me.
Sure.
Particularly, Logan Thomas had a solid game, and he is now, by the way, doing some math in my head, 62 receptions for how many? For you hit 77 yards, so about 536 yards, I believe.
Those are very good numbers for any tight end.
Yeah, that's decent numbers. That's decent numbers, and his targets are going to be up to. I forget how many targets he had, but he's in the high 80s for targets. So, I mean, decent year. So, nobody else really did anything that excited me in offense. So, Logan Thomas, and nobody excited me, period, on defense, really. But Cameron, since somebody has to get it, and nobody on the Seattle Seahawks deserves it either, I'm going to say Cameron Curl, not for the reason Jamal said, but because he had 8 tackles, and he tied with Gleek Hudson. Mm-hmm. So I'll give it to Curl for leading the stat sheet this week.
Yeah.
It's just a sad reason, but nobody jumped out at all.
Well, I think we'll make it a clean sweep on offense. Thomas, yeah, everything you guys said, true. He set a record, I think, for catches, for his personal best at least, because he had, 13, 14, something like that? So,
well, he had 13 receptions on 15 targets, 101 yards.
Yeah.
I did my yardage wrong. Yeah, so he's up to 570 yards passing.
I mean, he's having a very good season. He's been a very good find by this staff. On defense, I'm going to give it to Hudson because here's what I noticed. He is starting to be around the ball a lot. Like, and anytime you see a tackle, he's either the one making it now or he's the second guy there a lot. And he's starting to stand out a lot on special teams as a gunner, which, I know a lot of people don't care about that, but he blew up one of these punts.
Alex does.
Yeah, I do because it's field position. Like, he blew up 1 or 2 punts, kept a deep, long field for Seattle. So things like that matter. So I'm going to go with Hudson there. And, I think he has the potential to be a good player for us in the future. So
yeah, absolutely. I agree. I mean, that's not a bad pick. I mean, he played with some heart.
Yeah, he played some heart, and, that's what it takes. So I think that should wrap it up for this show, guys. I don't think we have any new business. I know we have some topics that we're definitely going to talk about on the weekday podcast because some news stories came out that people should be starting to look up about the team.
That's called a tease, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, there's your tease. Go read the news, jerks.
Don't tell them that. Tell them to come back and listen next time.
Well, no, they can read the news and then they come back and listen to us opine about it because that's the point.
I'd rather educate them. I'd rather them focus all of their energy on the Hog site. Don't read any other source.
Don't read any news. Don't search Twitter. Don't search Facebook.
Right.
Don't
Just
do
come
anything.
Twitter's a wasteland of stupidity. Don't go to Twitter.
Yeah.
The Hog site.
Listen to us and then just stare at a wall. That's all I want you to do for the next 4 days.
Or better yet, listen to the show over and over and over again so you hear every word.
And that should take us through the end of through Wednesday or Thursday, whenever you get the next show.
Let's go, Alex Smith.
Just listen to this.
Football. Yeah, get back healthy.
Yeah. Hopefully Alex Smith comes back for the Carolina game.
Come on.
Yes. Yeah. I'm excited to watch the Giants hopefully get their ass kicked today.
Man.
I'll talk to you guys later, and see you guys on the next show.
See you.
Bye.